I never imagined the day would come when my childhood dreams turned into disappointment. I will never forget the moment everything shattered around me. The world felt impossibly heavy. I stood in my living room, clutching that old, tattered journal, the pages filled with bright dreams and fervent promises of a future. My hands trembled, and each breath caught in my throat like a shattered glass shard. The room was eerily quiet, too quiet. Shadows danced in the corners, and the air hung thick with unspoken words. I could hear the faint ticking of the clock, each second echoing the countdown of my fading hopes. I had always imagined I'd be a writer, weaving stories that would make people feel, make them laugh and cry. I could picture it so vividly: book signings, laughter, the hum of excitement in crowded bookstores. Instead, a long road of rejection letters lay in front of me, each one another nail in the coffin of my dreams. My family had always supported me, their voices full of encouragement. My mom's soft hand would rest on my shoulder, reminding me of the visions I had shared, as bright as the summer sky. My dad, with his deep laughter, filled my heart with glee. But now, the weight of their expectations felt like a yoke around my neck, and I feared I was letting them down. Phil, my best friend, always knew how to make me smile. He believed in me so fiercely that I could almost feel it radiating between us. But lately, even his infectious laughter had faded, replaced by awkward silence. I could see the worry in his eyes, the way he would hesitate before asking about my writing. There was an ache deep within me, a growing tension that twisted my insides. Nights turned into battles against my own self-doubt, waking up to see the morning light through the blinds, feeling the dread of not being good enough gnawing at me. And just when I thought I was spiraling toward the abyss, a letter arrived. It was unlike anything I had seen before, an invitation to an exclusive writer's workshop, hosted by an enigmatic author whose words had gripped my heart long before my dreams began to crumble. My pulse quickened as I read the words, but just as quickly, a chill ran down my spine. The last line lingered like a warning: this opportunity comes with a cost. What cost? My heart raced. Could this be the lifeline I so desperately needed, or would it plunge me further into despair? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. That night, the air was thick with anticipation and dread intertwined. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the invitation mere inches from my fingertips. The shadows created by the bedside lamp flickered, the light catching on the delicate paper where the ink seemed to taunt me with promises. This opportunity comes with a cost. It had haunted my thoughts all night, twisting my insides. In the morning, sunlight trickled through my window, warm yet distant. I imagined it shining down on my book jacket, my name sprawling across it. But reality crashed over me like a wave, heavy and relentless. I remained in bed, wrestling between my yearning for hope and the fear of failure. The day trudged on, my mind lost in the labyrinth of what-ifs. I absent-mindedly made my way to my favorite cafe, a place where countless writers had once gathered. Table after table was filled with laughter and the clinking of mugs. It was hard to reconcile that joy with the hollow feeling lodged in my chest. As I sat there, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, my eyes landed on a girl across the room, a stranger who seemed firmly lost in her world. She scribbled furiously in a notepad, the pen dancing across the page like a bird in flight. Something about her concentration sparked a flicker within me, and for the first time in days, hope bloomed softly, if only for a moment. "Excuse me, is that your writing?" she said suddenly, her voice bright and curious. I glanced up, startled, and met her gaze. She had an intensity in her eyes, sharp but warm, like the laughter that escaped from the group of patrons behind her. I nodded, unsure if she was referring to the torn pages of my journal that I had hesitantly spun onto the table. Yes. Just some thoughts. Thoughts are the seeds of stories. I'm a huge believer in that, she said, her enthusiasm infectious. She introduced herself as Ava and soon, we exchanged conversations that felt far too fluid for two strangers. As we talked about our writing, the joys, heartaches, and aspirations, I felt remnants of my hope unraveling within me. Have you ever faced rejection? She asked, tilting her head slightly as if studying the contours of my spirit. I sighed, the weight of my past nipping at my heels. Every time I submit something, part of me braced for impact. Ava leaned forward, her eyes sincere. Rejection is just part of the road. It shapes us, sharpens our voice. Don't ever forget how brilliant you are. Her words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, but just as quickly, the darkness pulled at my thoughts. I wasn't brilliant. I was scared. Later that evening, as a sunset washed the sky in hues of orange and purple, I found myself rehearsing the words I had yet to write for the workshop what if exercise included in the invitation. But each attempt felt like a smear on a canvas I always envisioned to be grand. Then there was the trembling phone call with my parents. They could hear the hesitation in my voice when I mentioned the workshop. Mom, Dad, there's this opportunity, but I'm scared. The silence on the other end of the line cracked through the distance. Honey, you've always had a gift. If this workshop is calling to you, don't ignore it. My mother's voice was soft, reassuring. You know we love you, no matter what. That I just don't want to disappoint you, I confessed, and for a moment, I could hear my heart hammering in my chest. Follow your heart, my dad chimed in, his voice steady, a foundation I longed for. But my heart felt heavy under the weight of their love and expectations. Could I survive the cost of following my dreams? Days passed, and while the workshop loomed closer, dread built up like a storm cloud above me. It was not just the workshop that frightened me, but the thought of what lay beyond it. Questions pulsated through my mind like a relentless drumbeat. What cost? Would I still be myself after whatever choices lay ahead? Just when I thought I couldn't bear the thought of taking that leap into uncertainty, I received a direct message from Phil. His familiar teasing humor had been conspicuously absent in our last outings. Hey! Just passing by and thought of you. Want to hang out tomorrow? It struck me as strangely out of character, a shift away from the usual laughter. Maybe he sensed my struggles more than I realized. When I arrived at the park the next day, I saw Phil sitting on our favorite bench, holding 2 ice creams, 1 mint chocolate chip, my favorite. The moment I saw him, the ice cream in his hand felt like a bridge spanning the distance of our recent silence. My heart raced. As he handed me my scoop, I noticed something glimmering in his eyes, a mix of concern and hope. So, tell me about this workshop, he said gently, taking a seat beside me. The vulnerability in his voice unsettled me. It was a view into the unspoken fears we both navigated. The air around us felt electric, waiting for the release of tension. I gathered my courage, ready to share the depths of my uncertainty. But before I could speak, we were interrupted. A loud commotion erupted from the nearby field. A group of children were playing, laughter bouncing high in the air, when one little boy stumbled and fell, crying as if his heart were breaking. Without a second thought, Phil dashed across the grass, lifting the boy up with gentle and encouraging words. The boy's tears ceased, and with Phil's infectious grin, he bounced back to his game. As I watched, a realization washed over me. Maybe our struggles weren't meant to be faced alone. Maybe, amidst all my fears and doubts, there was still space for Kinesto myself, to the journey ahead. I guess, I said softly when he returned, I'm just scared of failing. Again. Phil placed his hand over mine, anchoring me back to the moment. You're not just a writer. You're my friend, and that doesn't change, regardless of where this takes you. But just as I marveled at his reassurance, my phone buzzed a reminder. The workshop was tomorrow. My stomach twisted at the thought until a shocking revelation blared through my thoughts like a siren. I realized I hadn't sent my acceptance yet. It was still sitting on my desk, unanswered. A fresh wave of panic surged through me. Would I take the leap, choice made in a heartbeat, or let it slip away, like so many dreams before it? The weight of the moment sat heavy on my chest, and in that silence, hope and fear intertwined in a dance of uncertainty as the sun began to set, casting shadows longer than ever before. The morning air was crisp, and the sun filtered through my bedroom window, illuminating the crumpled acceptance letter that sat defiantly on my desk. It felt like a silent accusation, urging me to make a choice I wasn't ready to confront. As I pulled myself from the edge of the bed, the enormity of the day weighed on my shoulders, pressing me deeper into the floor. I could hear snippets of laughter from the street below, the sounds of life moving effortlessly while I remained paralyzed by my own indecision. With every tick of the clock, my internal battle raged louder. The echoes of Ava's words resonated in my mind. Rejection shapes us, but what if my fear of failure dominated who I was instead? After a hasty breakfast, I poured myself a cup of coffee, letting the familiar warmth cradled in my palms soothe the growing doubt festering in my heart. My phone buzzed, interrupting my spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Ava. "Hey. Just thinking of you. Are you ready for today? I can't wait." Her excitement felt like a beacon, but it only amplified my own fears. "Ready?" I muttered to myself. How could I ever be ready when the prospect of vulnerability felt like a chasm before me? I took a deep breath, letting Ava's positivity anchor me. If only for a moment. Restlessness clawed at my insides as I paced my tiny kitchen. Suddenly, the image of that crumpled letter became more than a silent reminder. It symbolized the crossroads of two paths, one leading to a chance to chase my dreams, the other a detour back to safety but without growth. That I slumped onto the couch, head in my hands. Just then, my cat, Luna, sauntered over and purred softly against my leg. Her gentle presence seeped warmth into my heart and my thoughts shifted. Maybe today I didn't have to go in search of grand triumphs or devastating failures. Maybe today was simply about helping me feel, helping me confront my fears, not just for the sake of success, but for the craft, for the sheer joy in creating. Before I could change my mind, I forced myself to rise. I made my way to the desk, where my laptop sat, its screen sparking to life. I hesitated, my heartbeat drumming aggressively against my ribcage. Yet the very act of typing my acceptance felt cathartic. I finally pressed send, sending a shimmering flicker of hope through my veins. Feeling a little lighter, I donned a jacket and stepped outside, letting the fresh air embrace me. The crispness of early spring carried the scent of blooming flowers and resilience, offering a semblance of clarity in the chaos of my mind. The walk to the workshop location felt both agonizing and exhilarating. Each step encouraged me to carry the weight of my fears instead of hiding from them. Arriving at the vibrant community center, the room buzzed with chatter. I hesitated at the threshold, evaluating a sea of unfamiliar faces brimming with blissful excitement. This was the embrace of new beginnings and the bitter sting of vulnerability. The push and pull of my emotions made every fiber of me ache for connection. Ava spotted me almost immediately, her face lighting up like the morning sun. "You made it." She enveloped me in a warm hug that somehow felt like a promise. "I was worried you wouldn't come." "Me too," I admitted, fighting back a swell of emotion. Then, in a bold move, I took a seat beside her among the others gathered. As the workshop commenced, our instructor spoke passionately about sharing our truths and unlocking the depths of our creativity. Each exercise unfolded like petals revealing leaves, and I found my heart swelling as I wrote. Being surrounded by the collective heartbeat of fledgling writers, each battling their own fears, ignited a fire within me I thought was long extinguished. But just as the embers began to glow brighter, my mind wandered back to Phil. The memory of him comforting that little boy tangled with my struggles. I couldn't help but wonder, what would he think if he saw me here, teetering between pride and panic? Between exercises, I caught glimpses of Ava's fleeting smiles and supportive nudges. We exchanged whispers about our ambitions, pooled our thoughts, and began unraveling stories steeped in pain and hope alike. Yet, beneath it all, anxiety lingered. I could feel it lying in wait. Would I truly belong in this world of vibrant voices? Or would my vulnerability expose me to that dreaded rejection? As I leaned into the afternoon's creative momentum, my phone buzzed for what felt like the 100th time in my pocket. Glancing down, my heart plummeted. It was a message from my mother. "We got some news. Call us when you can." I glanced at Ava, fear knotted in my stomach. Something within my gut twisted with dread. What news could possibly await me? The world around me faded, and suddenly the joy of the workshop felt muted and dulled. "Everything all right?" Ava asked, noticing my distress that I forced a smile though it felt as fragile as glass. "I'm not sure. Just family stuff." The anxiety caught up to me as I turned away from the group, stepping out into the hallway for air, my heart racing. I held my breath, dreading what awaited me on that call, hoping desperately that I wouldn't face another disappointment today. With shaky hands, I dialed my mom's number, lingering on the precipice of possibility and uncertainty, waiting for the response that could shatter my moment of newfound hope. The call rang for what felt like an eternity, each beep echoing in my mind like a relentless drumroll. With every passing second, my resolve wavered, suffocated by dread. Finally, my mother picked up, her voice wavering as she greeted me. "Hey sweetie, how are you?" Hey, I just started a workshop," I said, my voice half-heartedly attempting to inject enthusiasm into the conversation despite the knot in my stomach. "That's wonderful. You've always had such a passion for writing," she said, pride lacing her words. But before I could bask in that rare compliment, I heard the sorrow that consumed the silence following it. "But, sweetheart, there's something else. It's about your father. He's been unwell." My breath caught, the world around me blurring as my mother's words spiraled in my mind. "Unwell?" I echoed, my voice cracking, as if the very syllables held the weight of my childhood. "What do you mean?" "He's been having some issues with his heart. The doctor suggests it might be time for surgery," she said, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "Surgery." The word felt like a gust of wind knocking me off balance, tossing me into a chaotic tempest of emotions. Memories of my father chasing me through the park, laughing as I soared on the swings, flashed vividly across my mind, a stark contrast to the fragile state of his health now. The man who had been my fortitude, who had whispered bedtime stories spun from imagination, now faced a battle he never asked for. "Is he okay? When's the surgery?" I stammered, grasping for something solid amidst the torrent of fear and helplessness. "He's stable for now, but it's scheduled for next week." We're trying to stay positive. The last sliver of hope flickered and dimmed. Positivity felt shallow against the gravity of the situation. "What happens if something goes wrong, Mom?" "Don't think that way. He's a fighter." "We all have to be," she replied, her voice cracking under the weight of her own fear. An overwhelming surge of helplessness washed over me. My gift for words felt futile in this moment, extinguished by the reality of life and its relentless unpredictability. "He'll come home. He'll be there," I said, the words pouring out of me, a desperate bid to anchor my swirling thoughts to something tangible, something that felt good. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to pull you away from your workshop," she said, her concern for my dreams ringing clear through her worry. An anguished laugh escaped me. "What dreams did I have left when the very foundation of love and security was trembling? Mom, this is important. I need to be there for you." "For Dad, okay, if it's what you want," she replied quietly, an understanding flickering between us like a fragile flame. As I hung up, an endless wave of emotions cascaded through me. I stepped back into the buzzing hall, where laughter and chatter felt like an alien language. The vibrant energy of the workshop now felt like smoke against a smoldering fire. I had just learned of a new fracture in my imperfect world, a reality where dreams and family collided, and it robbed me of breath. Ava caught my eye. She must have sensed my disheartenment. Without saying a word, she moved towards me, wrapping her arms around me as if she could shield me from all the sadness weaving its way through my heart. Her warmth seeped into my skin, grounding me, if only for a moment. "You okay?" she whispered, her voice low and steady. "I know. My dad might have to have surgery," I managed to say, the weight of grief and uncertainty hanging heavily in the air. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, she breathed, pulling back to look me in the eyes. Do you want to leave? I shook my head fiercely. No. I mean yes. I want to be there, but I can't just leave. My stomach churned, unsettled at the prospect of abandoning my connection to my passions. Then we'll figure it out together, she said softly, her hand finding mine. You don't have to go through this alone. You can talk to me. We can still write, maybe for him. The unexpected kindness in her suggestion ignited something within. I realized that even in my weakest moments, hope could flicker like a candle awaiting breath. I can write him letters, or a story, I said, feeling the thrill of creation coil back into my hesitant heart. Things to remind him of the good times. Dreams we shared. Ava's eyes sparkled in understanding. Exactly. We won't let go of those dreams, not today. But even as a sense of shared purpose took root, darkness pooled at the edges of my mind, whispering doubts and fears I struggled to shun. What if my dad's courage faded in the swirl of uncertainty? What if my own writing failed to resonate? The doubts threatened to crush me, even as determination flickered faintly like the flame in a candle, just waiting for the right breath to grow and illuminate. As the workshop session continued, I found myself unable to concentrate. I scribbled aimlessly, words morphing into jumbled letters, frayed fragments of the urgency inside me yearning to burst forth. Amidst the words, a question emerged starkly, echoing in the depths of my mind: what would happen if I faced my fears head-on? Could I confront not just my father's condition, but my own flaws and insecurities that felt impossibly intertwined? Then a gripping text message jolted me from my spiraling thoughts. It was from my brother. We've just been informed. Dad's going to be on the news. Something about the surgery. My breath hitched. The impact of that revelation was immediate, pulsing through my veins with electric intensity. My heart thundered against my ribcage, anticipation clawing its way to the forefront. Suddenly, the very world of creativity and urgent letters felt insignificant compared to what lay ahead, the spotlight of scrutiny directed not just at my dad but at our family. With burgeoning fear anchoring deeper into my chest, I felt like I was standing on the brink of a cliff, peering into the unknown. Would this bring us together in ways we could hardly fathom, or would it fracture our already fraying bonds? I had a sinking feeling that this was just the beginning of something monumental, something I couldn't yet comprehend. The workshop around me faded, voices became distant murmurs, and in that pulsing silence, I stood between the emotional precipice of my dreams and my unyielding love for my family. It was a moment that paralyzed me with equal parts dread and courage, where every choice I faced felt explosive, propelling me toward tomorrow's uncertainty. And in the blurred lines of hope and despair, the day transformed into a harrowing reality I never imagined I'd confront. The sun cast shadows like elongated fingers across the workshop floor, as if time itself had slowed in the wake of my brother's message. I stared at my phone, the screen glowing like a beacon of dread, feeling the world around me dissolve until it was just me and the weight of impending confrontation. Ava's voice broke through my reverie, soft yet insistent. Hey, are you all right? Her concern shifted my focus back to her, the vibrant energy of the workshop now juxtaposed with the storm in my heart. I forced a smile, trying to mask the tempest brewing inside. Yeah, just family stuff. Want to talk about it? She asked, her genuine interest nudging at the walls I had erected around my emotions. The thought of unraveling my worries to her felt like exposing an open wound, raw and vulnerable. But there was something about her presence, an offering of solace, that made the dark seem a little less daunting. It's just Dad's surgery. Now he's going to be on the news. It feels like this enormous spotlight is going to magnify everything. I swallowed hard, struggling to articulate the swirl of emotions threatening to suffocate me. She nodded, her brow furrowed in understanding. It's understandable to feel that way. I just wish I could make the situation better. Or that he wasn't facing this at all, I confessed, my voice trembling with uncharacteristic honesty. It just feels so out of my control. Like all I can do is watch. Maybe you can be more involved than you think. Ava's ideas felt like fragile threads reaching out to connect with my turmoil. You're his daughter. You know him better than anyone. Use that voice of yours not just on the page, but to support him. The very thought sent a shiver of hope through me. However, self-doubt crept back in quickly, tainting the light. What if my stories don't help? What if they're just words? What if? I scrambled to keep the momentum of hope, but the fear blurred my vision. What if I wrote, and it wasn't enough? Words are powerful, she interjected firmly, cutting through the haze. They can be a refuge, and they hold the truth of your heart. In times like this, they matter more than ever. Her conviction struck chords deep within me, resonating on frequencies I thought I had lost. I drew a breath, steeling myself. You're right. I need to find a way to channel this tidal wave. Maybe I could write something for Hema, piece for the news, or a letter documenting the journey. Something that reflects our struggles and our hope. Just as I began to forge this new avenue of expression in my mind, the workshop's doors swung open suddenly, and our instructor entered, a look of urgency etched across her face. Everybody, I need your attention. I know some of you may have personal matters to attend to, but there's an opportunity that just came through. Curiosity piqued, I turned to Ava as the instructor continued. A publishing agent is visiting tomorrow. They're looking for fresh voices, authentic stories. The room buzzed with murmurs, a palpable energy rising in the air, but I felt the twist of my heart collide with the weight of the impending news about Dad. What did it matter if an agent wanted my writing when my family was wading through the quagmire of vulnerability? The urgency of life loomed larger than any opportunity. Ava, I can't even think about that. My voice trembled, conflicted between the flickering candle of ambition and the raging storm of fear for my family. What if everything is falling apart? What if I don't have it in me? She caught my eye, fierce determination blended with tenderness. You can do both. Write for him, and share your truth with the world. Life doesn't take a break just because we're hurting. Give yourself permission to feel both things. Fear and creativity can coexist. That's where real stories lie. The thought of combining those two worlds sent a rush through me. Perhaps writing the story I feared might not only help my dad but grant me the strength to confront my own vulnerabilities. The very thought of embracing that duality felt intoxicatingly frightening yet liberating. Just as I jotted a few notes down, a sudden burst of laughter erupted from a group nearby, drawing attention. The laughter morphed into gasps and murmurs as one of the participants turned pale. Another rushed to her side, panicking over the sudden change in the atmosphere. In that chaotic moment, concern spread like wildfire through the room, diminishing nuances of my own worries. The larger world seemed to intrude on my cocoon of angst, and I felt a voice inside me ripple awake, urging me to react. This was the chaos of existentia, a blend of pain and unexpected moments of light. Grief could drive our stories forward, weaving them with threads of profound honesty, heart and resilience. As I knelt beside the woman, offering her support, I caught a glance from Ava. We shared a silent understanding, our collective puzzles fitting together even amidst our personal storms. Wasn't that just how life worked? A tapestry of moments stitched with both shadow and light, but amid the swirling emotions and hopes building upon the foundation of my family's uncertain future, a thought gnawed at me. What if the looming presence of the press twisted our narrative? What if they defined us in stark contrast to who we truly were? I found myself tethered between fear and rising courage, standing on the precipice of defining my voice. And as the room filled with renewed energy, I realized I was faced not only with navigating my father's healthcare crisis but also the imminent test of my character, where dreams they of family or writing intertwined, spiraling dangerously toward an uncertain tomorrow. My heart raced, torn between solace and fear, and the future stretched before me like a vast, unexplored expanse, beckoning for every facet of my story to unfold. The morning sun spilled through the workshop windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, but instead of warmth, it cast a chill over my heart. Today was different. The mention of the publishing agent still echoed through my mind, a distant siren call in the storm of worry for my father. I used to dream about moments like this, imagine them bursting with promise and life, but now they felt like a cruel contrast to the turmoil that threatened to swallow me whole. Ava was at my side, her resolve unshaken. She had become a tether to hope, grounding me even as I shivered under the glaring reality of my father's surgery. We arrived early, and I could hear her heart steady, unwavering as she prepared for a meeting with the agent. Meanwhile, my heart raced with every tick of the clock. "Why do you look so far away?" she asked, a playful smile nudging at the corners of her mouth. "I am right here," I said, attempting a steady laugh, but it faltered under the strain of the truth. Too much is happening," I finally admitted. Ava placed a hand on my arm, her warmth breaking through the wall of ice around me. "You can share your fears with me. It doesn't make you weaker. It shows the depth of who you are." A wave of gratitude washed over me for the moments of kindness that interspersed the chaos of life. But as the clock continued its relentless count, a dark thought wormed its way back in. What if my words weren't good enough? What if, amidst the writing, my father's struggle was twisted into something unrecognizable? As if in response to my mounting anxiety, my phone chimed. It was a text from my brother, a simple update with a grainy photo attached. Dad looked frail, propped against the hospital pillows, tubes snaking around him like forgotten paths. Home seemed galaxies away. My breath hitched in my throat as fresh waves of despair rocked me. "Everything okay?" Ava asked, instinctively moving closer to get a glimpse of my screen. I didn't answer, choosing instead to let silence hang heavily between us. The bustling room around us, filled with eager writers awaiting their turn, felt oddly detached from my reality. The juxtaposition heightened the sense of isolation I felt. I was adrift in familiar waters now tainted with murky sorrow. In that moment of stillness, I felt the first real pangs of loss for the carefree dreams I had carried into the workshop. Those dreams were sediment, layered under the rocks of disillusionment, now too heavy to lift. Would my stories become echoes of embarrassment instead of beacons of pride? "Maybe write him a letter before you meet the agent," Ava suggested gently, as if reading my thoughts. "You can address everything you feel, all your fears, even the beautiful memories. Those moments matter too." But the churning tide of dread led me to envision a different letter, one that would lay bare my self-doubt and insecurities. A letter that could unravel the fragile semblance of courage I felt I had built over the past few days. What if my father read it and only felt burdened by my struggles? After all, it was his fight, not mine. "Do you mind if I go outside for a moment?" I asked, the weight on my chest pressing too heavily now. Ava nodded, her expression understanding as I slipped out of the workshop. The air outside was fresher, brushing against my skin like a soft caress. I inhaled deeply, willing the coolness to seep into my soul. I strolled aimlessly, letting the sounds of laughter and muffled conversations fade behind me. Just beyond the workshop, a park opened wide, a sea of green and sunlight that held a bittersweet beauty for me. As I wandered aimlessly through the grass, I noticed an older man feeding birds tiny flakes of bread scattered about as an orchestra of flutters rose up. It was a moment that spoke of kindness, of unspoken bonds and shared existence. Without realizing, I stepped closer to the heartwarming scene, hunger for connection gnawing at me. "Would you like to help me?" the man said, glancing up with a twinkle in his eye, inviting me in with an unexpected kindness. I hesitated, my reservations clashing violently with the yearning for shared humanity. But something within me, a longing for simplicity amidst the chaos, nudged me forward. I nodded, crouching beside him. We shared silent moments, tossing crumbs and watching the birds flock around us. The more we fed them, the more I felt weight slip away, lost in the beauty of that fleeting connection. I didn't have to be defined by my fears, I could simply exist, in this moment, caring for something greater than myself. But just as shadows began to stretch, marking the path of the sun toward the horizon, my phone buzzed again, bringing with it a text that shattered my burgeoning calm. It was from my brother, and it simply read, "The surgery was postponed. They found something else." A cold wave washed over me, the world tilting dangerously as I stood frozen. What did that mean? My thoughts spiraled, drowning out the gentle whispers of the birds. the man beside me remained oblivious to my turmoil, lost in the simplicity of a small act of kindness. But I was now faced with an abyss of uncertainty, my heart teetering on the edge of hope and despair. The dreams I reluctantly harbored began to feel like a cruel joke, threatening to collapse under the weight of relentless challenges. As I turned to head back, the vibrant laughter from the workshop met me halfway, igniting questions I was not ready for. Would I dare return to the chaos, the words rushing to mingle with fear? Or was delight forever lost in this mosaic of disappointment? Each step felt heavier, an emotional cliffhanger that lingered just at the edge of my resolve, leaving me to ponder what was waiting for me inside, and would I be brave enough to face it? The walls of the workshop loomed ahead like a fortress, each one humming with energy from the writers inside, their laughter and chatter continuing unabated, a stark contrast to the tumult roiling within me. As I approached the door, hesitation slowed my steps, and I found myself gazing at the wooden slats that divided me from the rest of the world. What was waiting for me on the other side? The familiar faces, the excitement of potential representation, the weight of my father's uncertainty, everything collided in a dizzying vortex. Each heartbeat echoed loudly in my ears, as if the very fabric of time was stretching in anticipation of my next move. Finally, I pushed through the door, the sound of it creaking almost too loud in the whirlwind of my emotions. Inside, Ava's laughter rang out like a lifeline, and I caught a glimpse of her animated conversation with another writer. I remembered how effortlessly she navigated connections. The contrast to my own turmoil was staggering. I felt out of sync, like a musician playing a note that didn't belong. "Hey, you," Ava said, her voice slicing through the noise of my doubts. She turned to me, concern momentarily clouding her eyes before she masked it with a smile. "Everything okay?" I forced a nod, but I could feel the uncertainty clinging to me, invisible yet palpable. "Just needed some air," I replied, my voice a hollow echo. The weight of my brother's message loomed like a storm cloud overhead, threatening to burst. "Good news, the agent has a free moment soon. Want to prepare a bit?" she suggested, her enthusiasm vibrant. It was almost infectious, a spark against the shadow of my spiraling fears. The mention of the agent stirred something deep within me, a flicker of ambition, perhaps, or the hope for validation. But in the same breath, the thought of delivering stories that I felt were fractured weighed heavily against my chest. "I don't know," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. A broader disappointment crept in, echoing doubts from the text, from what it meant for my father. "What is it?" "You can tell me," she pressed gently, and I wished I could be as open as she was. The way she exuded warmth, Kurgite filled the gaps in my heart that felt too vast, too desolate. That I took a breath, my hands fidgeting with the hem of my shirt. "They found something else. They postponed Dad's surgery." "I don't know what it means." My words felt jagged, breaking against the fragile atmosphere of ambition and dreams that enveloped us. Ava's expression fell, the light in her eyes dimming as the reality of my situation sank in. "I'm so sorry," she said softly, reaching for my hand to give it a gentle squeeze. The comfort of her gesture felt like a buoy in my ocean of uncertainty, a reminder that perhaps I was not as alone as I felt. "Part of me just wishes it was over," I said, my voice trailing as if more words were waiting, trapped in my throat. "But now, I'm terrified of what they'll find. What if it changes everything?" Ava's eyes were kind, full of the empathy I so desperately needed. "No matter what they find, you are more than your father's illness. You have the right to your own dreams, too. You can't stop living just because you're worried." I exhaled slowly, the tension in my shoulders easing ever so slightly. What if my words aren't enough? What if my stories aren't strong enough to stand on their own? "Your father is proud of you," she countered softly, the conviction in her voice swelling around us like a protective glow. "You have a voice that deserves to be heard, whether your dad is sick or not. That's what makes your writing real, too. It's your truth, and it's valuable." There was a flicker of something, a spark against the encroaching shadows. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed to frame my father's struggle not just as my pain but as part of the tapestry of our lives, each thread vibrant, each tear illuminating the darker parts of the fabric. Just then, another writer approached, catching our intimate moment. A slight smile played on her lips, but it faltered as she sensed the heaviness. "Is everything all right?" she inquired, her tone sincere. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again, ripping my attention away from the conversation. The sudden urgency swept through me, my heart racing as I unlocked the screen. It was another message from my brother, the timing ominous. "Mom is on her way to the hospital. We need to prepare ourselves for what's next. Call me when you can." A chill cascaded through me, an electric tension pooling in the pit of my stomach. My world felt upside down, the ground shifting beneath my feet. I looked up to see Ava, whose expression had turned from one of concern to understanding, a shared knowing dawning in her eyes, a sense that life would never look quite the same. "What is it?" she whispered, her voice threaded with worry. "They're prepping for something. I think they might need to do a more invasive procedure." "I can't." My voice cracked, and a sense of helplessness flooded in, washing over me like a cold wave. "I'll go with you," she said immediately, her presence steady, holding the weight of both our fears momentarily aloft. "How about we step outside?" Take a moment. With her at my side, we walked out, the sunlight once again embracing us, but the warmth felt different now. It was overshadowed by the chilling unknown that lay ahead, and as I stepped beyond the workshop, my heart raced not just from fear, but from the enormity of the path that lay ahead. What would we find when we stepped into that hospital room next? Would it bring us together, or would it fracture further what was already broken within us? And most hauntingly, as I looked back at Ava, I wondered if I was truly brave enough to meet whatever reality awaited me. The hospital loomed ahead like a specter, its sterile walls bright but cold, the air thick with tension and uncertainty. Each step down the linoleum corridor echoed loudly in my mind, a drumbeat of impending revelations. Ava walked beside me, her presence a steadying force, but even that couldn't dispel the dread coiling around my insides. "What if this is it?" I muttered, my voice trembling as we approached the waiting area outside the surgical wing. The way I even voiced it felt wrong, a betrayal to the hope I was clinging to. I cast a sideways glance at Ava, whose normally vibrant spirit now seemed just as dim as the fluorescent lights flickering above us. "It's not it." "Not yet." Her reply was firm, but I could see the wavering in her eyes. It mirrored my own anxieties, an unwelcome reflection of the fear clawing at my heart. We reached the waiting area where my mother sat, tapping nervously on her phone, her face pale and drawn. In that moment, the weight of the world descended on my shoulders, a burden that felt not just mine to bear but one that encompassed our entire family. "Mama," I murmured, approaching her. The hollowness that had settled in my chest expanded, suffocating any fragments of comfort I had hoped to find. She looked up, terror flickering in her gaze. "They won't let us in until she's out," she said, her voice brittle. "They didn't tell me how long it would take." That I nodded, the lump in my throat growing. What was taking so long? A million scenarios whirled in my mind, some hopeful, others dark and twisted. I wanted, desperately, to reach out and provide comfort. She needed me, yet I felt utterly unmoored, adrift in a sea of my own fears. Ava squeezed my hand softly, and I glanced at her, silently grateful for her unwavering support. "Why don't we grab some water?" she suggested, her tone brightening with the suggestion as if she were trying to deflect the dark shadows gathering around us. That I nodded, grateful for the distraction, especially when even standing still felt like an eternity. We wandered to the vending machine down the hall, where the stark peal of coin against metal rang out like a warning bell in the silence. I bought a bottle of water, twisting the cap off and taking a long sip, as if that mundane act could wash away our worries. "Want to talk?" she asked, pausing. "About anything, honestly. I feel lost," I replied, the weight of vulnerability bringing heat to my cheeks. "I keep thinking about my writing. All these dreams of being published, of sharing my stories with the world, and now, with everything happening, it all feels so trivial. Who am I to dream when my family is so fragile? What if?" My breath hitched, the thought too painful to articulate. Ava leaned closer, her eyes piercing through the veil of despair I had woven around myself. "Maybe they're connected. Your writing, your family. It's all part of who you are. You can't dismiss your dreams just because of what's happening now, but if I focus on my writing, am not watching my father in his moments of need. How can I do both? My voice cracked, and the dam holding back my emotions shattered. You can write about this. About him. About fighting for the words you both deserve. Her words felt like arrows, striking the heart of my conflict. You don't have to choose one over the other. Before I could respond, my brother's face appeared at the end of the hallway, and an uneasy tension rippled through me. Relief washed over my mother upon seeing him, but my gut churned. I had imagined he'd be my rock, but a part of me braced for the stormy winds he might bring along with him. My brother approached with hurried steps, his expression tight with urgency. I felt every heartbeat become a countdown. "They're finishing up," he announced breathlessly, glancing at each of us, his eyes darting between the three of us as if trying to gauge our reactions. "But there's something else, what do you mean?" I asked, a wave of dread squeezing my chest. My mind raced with the possibilities of what could be on the edge of revelation but felt terrifyingly out of reach. I overheard a conversation from the nurses. About Dad's condition. His words caught in his throat, the truth hanging heavy in the air. They found something more on the scans. They're going to recommend a different treatment. It might be more aggressive. A piercing silence enveloped us, the weight of his confession crashing down. Like a weighty anchor, it pulled at my heart, and instinctively, I staggered back, the world around me blurring. "What does that mean?" my mother asked, her voice nearly a whisper. "It means there's hope, but it's going to be a difficult road," he replied, his voice wavering slightly. "But they need to do more tests first." The specifics he faltered, the horror of the unknown reasserting itself in the silence. I felt a swell of emotions, hope tangled with fear wrapping around my insides like barbed wire. Would a brave new treatment really be the answer, or merely a delay to a heartbreaking conclusion? Ava moved closer to me, squeezing my hand tighter as we processed the implications of my brother's news. In that moment, it was painfully clear life was not merely about dreams and writing but about the raw, visceral experience of living each moment, no matter how fractured or painful they might become. The question loomed larger now. Would the stories I wanted to tell be enough to illuminate the path ahead, or would I find myself endlessly navigating the churning waters of uncertainty? With each breath, I felt the looming reality crystallize. Neither my writing nor my family's struggle would ever be simple again. And as we stood there, gripped by the unknown, with Ava's determination radiating warmth next to my quaking body, I realized this was only the beginning. The cliff I stood upon was just one of many I would have to confront, but this time, I couldn't look back. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead mingled with the whispers of worry flowing through the waiting area. The air felt thick and stale as I tried to find a balance between the numbness wrapping around me and the chaotic thoughts swirling in my mind. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, a reminder of what hung in the balance. Ava, sensing the turbulence within me, gently brushed my arm. "You're not alone in this. We have each other," she said softly. Her words were like a balm on an open wound, but the ache of uncertainty remained. As we returned to the waiting area, I caught sight of my mother visibly tensing at my brother's revelation. She pressed her palms against her cheeks, her eyes searching each face around her as though she could find answers written there. I felt a deep-rooted desire surge within me to reassure her, to tell her that everything was going to be okay, but my own heart felt heavy with doubt. "I can't believe this is happening," my brother murmured as we settled into the seats together, the dull walls echoing his hopelessness. "Just last week, everything seemed normal. Dad was teasing me about my cooking, said I couldn't even boil water properly. And now he might be facing something worse." We exchanged glances, a shared understanding hanging heavy between us. Memories of laughter and warmth from our childhood felt like ghosts now, taunting us with a past that seemed irretrievably lost. Yet, somewhere within that cycle of despair, I felt a spark, the moment I had come to realize how precious our time together was, even amidst the shadows encroaching upon us. "What if we take turns with Dad during recovery?" I blurted out, surprising even myself. "I can read to him, and you can bring more of your cooking light-hearted distractions. Anything to keep his spirit up. We can be the family he needs." My heart raced as my brother and Ava nodded in agreement, a fragile thread of solidarity binding us in that instant. That I love that idea, Ava said, a determined smile breaking through her own worries. And I could write letters for him. Like a little journal from this moment. A reminder that he's loved, every step of the way. My brother glanced at her, admiration threading through his features. Well, show him he's not alone in this fight. Together, we began to imagine small acts of kindness and love, things that had the power to heal. We could be warriors not just against the diagnosis but for one another. The threads connecting us strengthened in the conviction that we could weave our stories together, battling despair and igniting a flicker of hope along the way. Soon, however, the whispered words from the nurses echoed in my mind, a different treatment, something more aggressive. Would it come at a cost? As I stared at the wall, unseeing, my thoughts turned darker, fixating on the daunting road ahead. The time spent in despair was so tangible, but the thought of making my father endure pain to save him felt unbearable. My hands trembled as I clutched the armrest, grappling with the weight of an uncomfortable truth. What right did we have to put his body through more turmoil, even with the hope it could save him? Ava's voice transported me back as she spoke. What if we gather his stories? Stories of the past. He can tell us about his dreams, his childhood. It will remind him of joy, something to hold on to amidst the struggle. Like a treasure hunt? My brother chimed in, the weight in his chest beginning to lift. We can ask him about his favorite memories and write them down. We could record them. I bet he'd love that. Right then, a few feet away, a father embraced his son, grasping his shoulders tightly, both visibly shaken. The rawness of their moment pressed against my heart like a steel vice, forcing me to confront the fragility of our lives. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. The scene was a sawtooth reminder that fleeting moments could suddenly become laced with gravity. As the enormity of our situation descended upon me, I noticed an elderly man seated on the opposite side of the waiting area, hunched over, clutching a worn, dog-eared novel. He glanced at me and offered a faint smile that, while bittersweet, felt strangely comforting. I didn't know his story, but the fleeting connection we shared grounded me, whispering that kindness still existed in the darkest of moments. Tomorrow we can start gathering stories, I said softly, my voice steadier now as I wiped my eyes. I'll bring my notebook. Just like you guys sighed a little project together. As we began to plan our first few questions, the heaviness of dread mingled with a sense of purpose. It was our way of acknowledging the struggle while fighting to share love amidst the uncertainty. Just as we began to harden our resolve, a nurse in scrubs emerged from the surgical area. Her face was familiar yet unreadable. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to speak with the family of Mr. Johnson," she said, her tone clipped. The air around us thickened, an unseen current of turbulence as my heart raced into my throat. We all shared uncertain glances, fear creeping back in. The nurse's expression shifted, her tone suddenly gentle, yet grave. "There have been developments and we need to discuss potential options." With those words, the fragile hope we had started to build felt like it was teetering on the edge of a cliff. My pulse quickened, the world narrowing as the implications of what she might say sunk in. We stood collectively on the precipice of something monumental, unwrapping the layers of uncertainty that surrounded us. Would this be the moment we would discover the ultimate truth? Or would we be swept back into another cycle of pain and confusion? In that split second, as we took a collective breath, I realized I was not merely a spectator in a world of loss. I was part of a narrative that was still being written, inked in the adventures of love, fear, and resilience. I braced for whatever revelations awaited us, knowing deep down that the journey had only just begun. The sterile smell of antiseptic hung in the air as we gathered around the nurse in anxious anticipation. My heart pounded fiercely against my ribcage, resounding like a war drum on the brink of battle. "Mr. Johnson is out of surgery," she began, a flicker of relief cutting through the haze of fear, just as an ice-cold edge crept up my spine. "For the time being, he is stable. But I must inform you that the prognosis is serious." Her words hit us like a punch to the gut. The small flicker of hope we had reignited with thoughts of stories and plans glowed dimly, still now, not yet extinguished but living on the edge, fighting against the dark. He will need a longer recovery period than we anticipated, and the next steps regarding his treatment will take some decision-making. She glanced at our faces, recognizing the storm swirling within us all. What does that mean for his treatment? My brother's voice trembled, raw with urgency. The weight of the unanswerable hung in the air, weaving a blanket of gravity over our group. Is he going to be okay? The nurse shifted her weight, her expression softening into something bordering on sorrow. That depends on how he responds to the therapies ahead. We need to prepare you for the fact that this is just the beginning of a long road. But for now, we need to focus on his stability. My mother stood frozen, the tension in her body palpable as if she were crafted from glass, poised to shatter at any moment. Every breath felt like a mammoth effort, and my own chest tightened as I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to catch up with the whirlwind of emotions spiraling around us. Just then, I caught a glimpse of Ava, whose steady presence had been my anchor through these harrowing moments. She took a step forward as if to shield us. "Can we see him?" she asked gently, yet there was strength in her inquiry, a conviction that tugged at the edges of my own fragility. "Yes, you may. The doctor will be in shortly to discuss more. Please follow me." The nurse led us through the sterile corridors, and as we walked, every footfall echoed the ricocheting worries within me. What would my father look like? Would he be the same man who could make me laugh just by joking about my terrible cooking, the one who had spun bedtime stories that cradled my dreams? Or would I find a shadow of the vibrant man I wanted to remember? We entered the room, and the sight before us arrested my breath. My father lay in the hospital bed, tubes snaking around him as the rhythm of a heart monitor pulsed quietly next to him, a constant reminder that he was still fighting. His face was pale, but there was still a flicker of recognition in his eyes as he turned toward us. "Hey there, team," he managed, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Dad," I exclaimed, stepping closer, and all hesitation melted away as I grasped his hand. It felt small and warm, the feeling both terrifying and comfortingly familiar. "You scared us." He chuckled weakly, a sound that was fragile but alive. "I guess I'm still performing always the showman, huh?" In that moment, the reality of the battle we faced parted like curtains, revealing the heart of our situation, love wrapped in fear, uncertainty laced with hope. I could see the man beneath the thin veneer of this sickened body, and despite everything, he still carried the hallmark of the person I loved most dearly. As my family clustered around him, I felt the weight of our shared love transform our worry into something grittier, something real that lingered in the air like an unshakable bond. "We're in this together, Dad," I said firmly. "You can't get rid of us that easily." His smile widened, though it faltered under the strain of his condition. "You've always been the optimistic one. Remember when you wanted to be a writer?" He mulled over memories, the bittersweet pang of nostalgia washing over us all. "I'm sure you have stories bottled up, huh?" Tears pricked my eyes as I fought to keep my voice steady. "I'm going to write them down for you, for us. Stories of every laugh we've shared, every tale we hold dear." I caught a glance from Ava across the room, a reassuring nod that felt like a promise, the reverberation of her support igniting a spark of resolve within me. "Stories?" My father croaked softly, a spark of interest igniting the depths of my spirit. "I'd love to hear those." What erupted next was an effortless string of memories, laughter mingling with tears as we recounted cherished moments, imbuing the sterile room with warmth. The act of storytelling became our armor, protecting us from the invasion of uncertainty. With every tale, I noticed my father's spirit lifting, his mirth returning briefly and that familiar glint of humor crossing his weary face, and in the gathering dark of uncertainty, we shared pieces of ourselves that cracked open old wounds but also created spaces for healing. My mother recounted how he had saved her heroic cold, certain she was simply being dramatic when she had, last week, expressed concern over needing chicken soup. My brother filled the gaps with tales of sneaking sweets and being caught, a favorite shared wrongdoing. In our joy, we wove a tapestry of connection stronger than mere worry. As the hours slipped away, we sat in a bubble of warmth amidst the oppressive reality that clung outside our circle. Despite the grim prognosis, laughter echoed through the hospital room, ebbing and flowing between us like waves washing onto the shore, stirring the embers of hope within our hearts, but being there with my father watching his spirit rise amidst the uncertainty made me realize that the writing was no longer about ambition or proving myself. It was about capturing the love we'd forged through the billows of darkness and chaos. As I gazed into his eyes, I felt renewed determination blossom. The stories would serve not just as a legacy but a bridge connecting us all. I would gather tales from history and dreams not only to illuminate where we had been but where we might still dare to go. As the darkness pressed in from the edges, I finally understood, there was no cost too great if it meant threading together the narrative of our lives. And when my father smiled at me, and whispered, "I believe in you, kid," I knew every ounce of pain and struggle was worth sharing. Stepping back from his bed, enveloped in our collective love, I felt an extraordinary clarity ignite within me where dreams intertwined with realities, illuminating the edges of uncertainty, reminding me that in the depths of fear, there exists the power of love, a force that forges stories stronger than any nightmare. As I turned to the window, breaking light streamed through the panes, the world outside a slush of golden hues. Reflecting on all we had just faced, my heart swelled in gratitude. Today, I would write for every moment that mattered, knowing that our stories were written in the ink of love, filled with every shadow and light cast across our lives. This was no ending, it was merely the beginning of our uncharted journey. To weave tales that could echo through the years, ripple across time. Because, after all, what stories are worth telling if not those that bloom from our hardest battles? And in that moment, I breathed deeply, feeling the embrace of my family grounding me firmly in reality. The clock ticked on, marking each second with the weight of potential all that awaited us. "Let's write," I said softly, a smile creeping across my face, realization washing over me. Let's write our way through this together, and in my heart, I knew the final line of our journey had not yet been written, it was waiting patiently, eager for the ink to flow anew.